Hey, this is Jody Stemler. We are at the 2019 Western Hunting and Conservation Expo.
And I'm Steve Belinda.
We've got a comedian with us today.
And I'm Steve Belinda, Jody's co-host for Talking Mule Deer, and right now we are talking to Butch Whiting from Kryptek Outdoor Clothing.
Butch, so glad to have you here. You and I have talked a lot this past year, and you've got an incredible story with your company, so thank you so much.
It's an honor to be here with you guys, Jody. Thank you guys.
Okay, so we just had an article in our convention issue of the Mule Deer Foundation magazine about that. I did an interview with you about your company a little bit, but not everybody gets the magazine. Tell us a little bit about you and Kryptek and the vision behind it, because it's an incredible story.
Yeah, it's a humbling story right?
Yes.
For me. So Kryptek Outdoor Group. So the company idea was formed in combat in a third world shithole called Tal Afar, Iraq, where we were stationed, myself and the other founder, Josh Cleghorn. At that time, I was his troop commander, and he was one of my junior warrant officers. And we were flying Apache attack helicopters. I had 8 Apache attack helicopters, longbows under my command. And whenever we weren't fighting and flying missions, we would daydream about hunting, right? And
that's because you grew up in Idaho, and mule deer hunting was your passion, right?
It was a family. My family's culture revolved around mule deer hunting. That's the end state with it. So extreme passion about hunting. Cleghorn's also a very, very passionate hunter as well. And here we are. I think this is like 05, 06, 07 in that time range. And I can't tell you after 9/11 how many hunting seasons in general we just missed because of being deployed.
Yep.
Constantly downrange. And we had guys that maybe we were in contact with that were in the military that were back home, or maybe they weren't, and we're living vicariously through them. We're living vicariously through hunting magazines and hunting DVDs and just daydreaming about how cool it would be to be in the outdoor industry.
Hey, Butch,
right?
can I jump in right here? I want to just ask you a question. When you were flying over terrain, did you look down and say, oh, that looks like a draw that would have a heck of a buck in it back home? Or
Yeah, absolutely we did. There's actually a herd of these really majestic black sheep on Sinjar Mountain. And Sinjar Mountain is right on the edge of the Syrian border in the northwest corner of Iraq. And we had a retrans team up there, and once a week we had to go resupply those guys. And anytime the Black Hawk would go in with the food and the water and the mail and all that, an age-64 Apache would escort them in. And I tried to get permission from H.R. McMaster, who's my senior raider. He's now the national security advisor for Trump, to go up and bow hunt those.
Are those spiral horn sheep?
They kind of do this out here,
they go out. Yeah, cool.
Out and wide. Yeah. But so I mean, there was all kind. Anytime you're flying, you're looking around, you're looking for the enemy, and then you're also looking for game at the same time, right? But to get back into that, I mean, we had the best archery range I think that Iraq's ever had at Tal Afar. That was Renegade Troop 43 ACR's archery range, and Bowtech Archery, which I have a really strong relationship, actually provided bows to my unit over there. And that was a downtime for a lot of guys. And some of those guys that got into that, they still do it today. We introduced them to that. But
awesome.
But there was a lot of daydreaming that was going on for me and for Cleghorn. And the bottom line is we came out with this concept of spiraling features and functions out of the special operations apparel industry. There's a lot of improvements that happened during the War on Terror, including, optics, missiles, weaponry, so on and so forth, communications, but also apparel. And so the idea was to bring that into the civilian hunting market, the hardcore backcountry hunting market, some of those features and functions. And so I wrote about a 25-page business model, and I got a call in 2009 from Cabela's, their big game hunting department, and they had gotten a copy of that business model. And they narrowed it into one sentence in this 25-page document.
Wow.
And the one sentence was exactly what I just said, was to bring these ideas and that are really honed in on the battlefield into apparel for a guy that's going to use them in the backcountry. And they said, we have tried to do this before, but this tactical hunting crossover, but we haven't been able to do it well, and it's because we don't have any authenticity, and we'd really like to talk to you. And so I flew down to Sidney, Nebraska. We met with these guys, and basically in 2010, 11, and 12, the only place you could buy Kryptek was at Cabela's. And those guys made an enormous amount of money. We made some money, not much. We started our hobby phase, basically.
And you were using
Mothwing,
right?
Mothwing Mountain Mimicry. Yeah, Mothwing Mountain Mimicry. The reason why we selected that camouflage is because Sitka started in Mothwing Mountain Mimicry, and then when Gore-Tex came in and acquired them, they went to Gore Optifade, and there was a cult following for that camo pattern in the market at that time. A lot of guys had incomplete systems. Maybe they had a jacket and they wanted to get a shirt and a pant or whatever, vice versa, or add to it some layering pieces. And so we really were able to capture a lot of the momentum of this technical backcountry apparel and the conditions that had been set. And that's the reason why we landed on Mothwing Mountain Mimicry. Right? So we enter into the hobby phase. Cleghorn was still in the military, active duty at that time. I had gotten out, was living in Alaska. I got out because just the deployment cycles. I had a 6-year-old daughter at the time and a 4-year-old, and I was gone. I was gone 4 out of 6 years on the oldest and 3 out of 4 on the youngest. And so, it was really a difficult decision at the time. Super, super hard. Had 10 years, 9 months, 6 days in. But it was. Now I look back, it was the best decision I made. So, hobby phase happens. A lot of awesome things happen for Kryptek. Stuff that you can't even put a price tag to, and it probably could never happen again. One of those things was the U.S. Army camo improvement effort, right? So we had aspirations to develop our own camouflage, and a solicitation came out from the the DOD, put it out for this new family of camouflage that was going to be tested rigorously and then going to become the new camouflage for the U.S. Army, right? And so these ideas that we had were based off of what we saw was the most effective passive concealment measure on the battlefield, which is camouflage netting, right? So, and that stuff was developed back in World War II. It's been around a long time. But you have these hexagons in the netting that get distorted and the fabric's woven in and out, and you have this three-dimensional aspect. Well, we took that three-dimensional aspect and we put it onto a two-dimensional surface.
So as a pilot, you probably were keenly aware of things on the landscape and probably helped you in this whole design, because I imagine you got pretty good at picking stuff out that shouldn't have been out there when you were flying.
You're absolutely correct. And we also got to see everybody that was a part of the effort there. So coalition coming in from Italy, Czechoslovakia, I mean, whatever, all these units all from all over the world, specifically in Afghanistan.
Right.
I mean, Afghanistan became, after 9/11, it was like the Wild West. There was a task force Dagger, and it was all the coalition special operations came together there at Kandahar. And so we got to see what was effective and what was not effective, right? To your point. When we submitted, they went through a very rigorous testing. We were down selected. How they did the down select was they took about 900 soldiers over a period of 1 year. They'd put them into a room, and there would be a big picture that would go up on the wall, like on a Proxima screen, and it'd be a shot of terrain, like a valley or a field or the jungle or whatever. And in that picture, there was another picture. It was called a PIP, a picture inside a picture. And the second picture was a 2-scale silhouette of a man that had the camouflage that they were testing. So the guy might be, a foot tall, or he might be, 2 inches tall. And the soldiers had a halo device that dropped down and tracked their retinas. And when the picture came up, they'd start to time the time, and their retinas would be bouncing around. And when they stopped, they had all the algorithm of the angle, and they knew they had a positive acquisition.
Right.
And they measured in microseconds how long that took. And that's how they down selected to the final 4. And this was a major deal for us because the other 3 companies that were down selected were all billion-dollar companies. Some of them had 30-man teams, and Kryptek was myself and Cleghorn with our laptops and our phones.
With other jobs.
With other jobs, completely apart. And then it went into the Phase 2 testing. The Phase 2 testing was extremely rigorous. It was all naked eye acquisition, force on force, and then also visually enhanced acquisition at night. in spectrums that don't really matter to deer hunters or hunters in general, but the infrared and shortwave infrared under night vision goggles and so on and so forth. To culminate that story out, the bottom line is that we got an enormous amount of lift out of it. It became extremely political. It was very, very political, way above our heads. Lobbyist
I don't know anything
groups,
about politics.
lobbyist groups
Yep.
involved, and so on. Congress ended up getting involved and passed a bill. The U.S. Army spent about $10 million, all said and done. The end state with this thing is that we ended up landing in Navy Special Warfare, Army Special Warfare programs with Coalition Special Operations, and we're the only camouflage that's in the civilian hunting market. The only camouflage that is in this show and any show we go to that's been extensively tested by the Department of Defense and selectively used by U.S. Special Operations and Coalition Special Operations.
So did you have to go through the patent process, the
Yeah.
U.S. patent process?
Yeah.
Was that an easy thing to do? I imagine that. I've heard horror stories about that whole process.
It was educational, and we didn't know anything about it, all that. We have an associate attorney that basically walked that through, and I have now a firm, IP firm, but we have intellectual property on our camouflage, and it's actually the grayscale version, what we call the macro and the micro pattern, black and white, and then we have our Highlander pattern, altitude, all these different patterns. And on these patterns, the only thing that changes is the colorways that get plugged in.
So the pattern, I at this point in time, I'm guessing most people have seen Kryptek. There may be a handful of people out there, but the one thing I keep hearing is that snakeskin pattern.
Yeah, I hear that too. But ultimately, if you know what camouflage netting is, then
it
you
makes
get
so
it.
much more sense.
It makes a lot of sense. Yep. And in the practice of using netting to camouflage equipment, and even taking netting and stretching it on a rifle or a helmet and painting it, that's a real common practice.
Right.
And people see that now and say, oh, that's Kryptek, right? But ultimately, it's a proven technique that's been around for a long time.
You just figured out how to do it on a two-dimensional?
Yep, that's right.
Well, it seems anymore any successful pattern is going to have knockoffs and imitators pretty quickly.
We do.
It's
even in the U.S. market. We do. Yeah, and it's a continuous battle. It's nauseating. They say that plagiarism is the highest form of flattery.
Yeah, but
when you're, it's your family's income and intellectual property you own, it becomes nauseating, for sure. But the thing about it is that it's just a paint job. What really matters and where we're really accelerating is what's under the paint job, right? So, like I've told Joey, it's like if I told Steve, I want you to go get me a red car, and you show up in a red Pinto, and I was thinking you were going to show up in a red Ferrari. Those are a big difference. They're both red cars, though.
Right.
So what matters is what's under the paint job, and our gear is very, very premium. We have programs. The Altitude program is the most premium. It's Scholler fabric out of Switzerland. Our fabric's printed in Germany. Phenomenal performance meets durability, all the way down to our tactical line, which is more of a utilitarian use. We cover the full spectrum. Our brand can absorb that and get away with that. But the quality of construction, the fabrics, the insulations, I'm super honored and proud that I now have in my product development design somebody that has unprecedented experience. His name's Greg Hauser, and we got him from Marmot, and he was at Marmot for 15 years, and before that he was at LL Bean for 25
some very
years.
Kind of traditional old school outdoor recreation, but
mountaineering.
Right?
Yeah, the Marmot mountaineering connection and stuff. And so our quality, our construction, that's the end state. We've got an amazing functionality when it comes to our camouflage that was designed to be functional, but it's also got this lifestyle thing that was not intended to happen. We never intended that. We started our camouflage at 400 meters because that's the max effective range of a 5.56 round, and we stopped at 10 meters. We never intended all this groundswell we have in lifestyle, specifically in fishing, like this guy that's just walking by right now. That's a fishing shirt that's done by another brand that we license with called Hook. They've had huge success, major success.
I love your blue stuff.
Yeah,
with Hook. I mean, my wife loves it. I love it. I mean, it's awesome.
What's crazy about the water patterns, I don't know if we got into that, Jody, but we did a program for a wetsuit program for a Navy Special Warfare organization, and Neptune and Pontus were not selected, and they were kind of thrown away. And that year at SHOT Show, we brought a couple swatches of that fabric, and we had some empty space at the back of our booth, and we just put it up on the wall. And by accident, people were going crazy over it, right? And it's the same macro and micro pattern as Highlander or Altitude. We just plugged in different colors into it. We see supercars wrapped, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Rolls Phantoms. I mean, it's just interesting because if I look at what you could call our competitors, you would probably never see their camouflage on those types of vehicles. So designed for the military, designed to be functional, but has a giant lifestyle appeal.
And some of that, your company in this industry has probably one of the sharpest rises, and I certainly don't know bottom line, but just in terms of how much I've seen your product, seen the Kryptek brand going around. You and I talked about how it is the cult connection with the video games, right?
Oh,
Didn't it?
yeah.
So tell me that story.
That is one of those stories that you just can't make up, and it's crazy. But two of our good buddies, one of them on our pro staff, they're former Delta Force guys. They had gotten out. They had a leadership and shooting school on the East Coast, and Activision sent some people out there. So Activision's like the guys that make Avatar, and they also have subsidiary brands that do video games, right? So this extremely high up guy goes through this course. Well, the whole time our buddies are wearing Kryptek gear, and he asked them about it, and they told him what they knew about it and the story and stuff. He flies back to Los Angeles, gets a hold of his VP of licensing. The next day they reach out and they want to put Kryptek into that video game at that time was Call of Duty Black Ops, right? And it was going to launch like in 60 days or something. So initially my knee-jerk reaction was, I don't care about video games, to be honest. I don't want to have anything to do with them. And then I got beat up by some people that were way smarter than me who said, you're a fool. And, I heard stories about, like, at any one time there's like 30 million people around the world playing these games all connected and stuff. And
I'm thinking, why aren't they out hunting? But
Well, I've never done that. I don't get that whole culture.
Well, what's happened is that game, the top tactical pattern was Kryptek Typhon. And you had to do 100 headshots in multiplayer to unlock the camo. Then you can put it on your guns and stuff in the game.
Cool.
And then it spiraled into Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, and all of our patterns landed in there. Then now there's Tom Clancy, Ghost Recon. What
hasn't made it into Fortnite yet? Because that seems to be like the big one out there.
Well, that would have been a good one to have it land in. But this kind of landed by accident, and all of the other ones that have happened have been by accident. But what happens is we get Kryptek fans that are big followers that maybe aren't even in the workforce yet. They could be still in high school or junior high or whatever. Yeah. And also many times they don't know anything about hunting, and they don't know anything about the tactical world, even though they aspire to it, right? And so we'll find ourselves educating on our social media platforms when, say, there's a post with maybe like Jana Waller and a bear or something like that, and then you get these questions, big Kryptek fans, why would you ever shoot a bear? And you have to go in to talk about, predators need to be managed, and they're tasty and all these things, and really slow down and take your time, because we have people that are fans that necessarily would never be at this show, Mm-hmm. So it just covers a lot of spectrum.
Yeah, well, it opens the door to a whole different avenue. And there was movies as well, right? Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah. Lots of movies. Jurassic World. All the security guys that actually get eaten by the dinosaurs are wearing Kryptek.
Wait a second. I don't know if that's good.
I know, right? Like, they shouldn't be able to see them. So we didn't do dinosaur testing on our camo, so unfortunately. The Fast and Furious 7, Expendables 3 was real prominent with, Ronda Rousey, Arnold Schwarzenegger, those guys wearing our stuff, and a whole handful of other movies. The biggest ROI type movie stuff is the stuff we get on Discovery Channel, and that normally falls back into the survival shows.
Okay.
Like Ultimate Survival Alaska was a big one for us, and Dude, You're Screwed, and Dropped, and things like that.
How did the Warriors accept the new pattern? Did they love it? I mean...
Yeah.
And the reason I ask that is this. A friend of mine was a tank commander.
Yeah.
20-plus years. I was at him at his show. I asked him, hey, he goes, if I never got to put another piece of digital camo on again, I love it. So he was looking for anything but what he had to wear.
So. Well, there is a psychology when it comes back into the military side, and I think on the hunting side as well, there's a psychology with camouflage. On the military side, you've got esprit de corps, morale, all these things. It's very difficult. We did go through another very, very high-end test that was specific to that. And what those guys did was put the various camouflage patterns that they were looking to use on mannequins and put them in the chow hall. And they basically asked, which ones do you like, right, to the guys. Mm-hmm. And so we won that, and it's just as simple as like, yeah, that's badass, right? Yeah. And but also that has to be functional, right? I mean, that's the biggest and most critical aspect of it, right? Functional on the battlefield. So yeah, I mean, they liked it, and in some cases we have some foreign military deals that we do that they are enamored to the point of like it's kind of bizarre, really, but it's just all the psychology aspect, and again, that was something that we really didn't even try to hit. The U.S. Army camo improvement effort was all based off of functionality, nothing off of the psychology, the recruitment, all that type of stuff. So,
well, with a sample size of one, my wife, she loves Kryptek pattern, and she hates all the other patterns that I wear. So it's, and the reason I mean, so there must be that appeal across gender, across age groups and everything else.
And I love Kryptek because they actually have one of the best women's lines that's out there right now. I've worn their gear. It's incredible. It fits well. It's fully functional, and it's incredible. So they're one of the companies that has not jumped on the bandwagon for women, but recognized that there is a very real need for quality, the form and function for women as well as men.
And that was an easy decision for us to get after because of the fact that my wife and my daughters love to hunt, and they hunt with me. And so even if it didn't make sense from the retail perspective, like getting huge placements and things like that, as an online play, it's a safe, still business decision, but ultimately it's an emotional decision for me because my girls, I want them to have the best gear possible, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And so McKenna's here with you, your oldest, right?
She is.
She graduated early, and now she's gone to work for Dad.
Well, she graduated a semester early, and she doesn't have the luxury of she's working. She got her first year of college done, but she's doing online classes, so she has a lot of freedom of maneuver right now, not tied into, going to classes every day. So this is her second show she's done. She was at Wild Sheep last week, and then she's going to EWA with us this year, and it's just a fun time, and she's helping out. It's cool. Yeah,
she's fantastic. I've watched her work in the booth.
So, Butch, what's your favorite type of hunt, species to hunt, place to hunt?
We cover that in the magazine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's mule deer.
Yeah.
I love to hunt mule deer, and I think that the reason why is because that's what I did with my family when I grew up as a kid. And that was such a sacred time of year for me through my youth, and the connections I had to my grandfather, my great-grandfather, my whole entire family would come together. And instead of, going on family vacations that, would be classified as normal, like Disney World or going to the beach or whatever, I never even fathomed those things. It was always about deer camp. And it was a real super special time. And so I think that part of that subconsciously is so ingrained in who I am that I am more passionate about mule deer than I am anything else. And I've also taken it on to the point where, from the time I left Idaho, went to college, went to the military, came back, it was 22 years. Yeah. And I didn't get to shoot a lot of mule deer during that time. And so I've had the luxury now to be able to hunt mule deer in multiple states in the same year, and it's been great.
Oh, great. That's awesome.
Now, when I was emailing with you right before SHOT Show, I think you were in Mexico.
I was in Mexico.
Did you get stuck at the border wall?
I didn't get stuck at the border wall because I had such exceptional interpreters, and the guys I went with actually came up and escorted us across. I'd been down there before and flew into Hermosillo, but this
They've
time
got great deer down there.
Huge, right?
Yeah.
And this place I went was all free range. It was phenomenal. I was extremely picky because there was two groups that were tied together. They overlapped just by a few days, and out of those 2 weeks, there was 4 bucks that were harvested that were over 200 inches.
Wow.
And so one of those bucks was 226.
Wow.
And some of the deer were just incredible. And I was very, very picky, very, because it was such a magical place. I wanted to really push the envelope. I could have harvested beautiful bucks, 185, maybe 190 in that range, but I was really holding out for a toad, one of these, that's a freaking Sonora Desert mule deer when you see it, right? But yeah, I was on a mule deer hunt there. I was the only guy in the group that didn't fill his tag. And that's happened to me a couple times now, and it's always been around mule deer. I've passed up some really super nice bucks just in the sake of really trying to, harvest one of those magical giants. Yeah. I've been extremely fortunate enough to kill, some really big bucks too. I've got a 206 that I'm super proud of that I shot on Veterans Day a few years ago in Colorado.
Very cool.
Just a giant. And I did get some really nice mule deer this last year. I was able to go on a great hunt with John Nosler and Bob Nosler and harvest a really nice buck, and also got another great buck in Colorado. But I have to say that I miss being able to go year after year to the same spot, familiar with the animals, familiar with the terrain, like I did growing up. Yeah, the family piece of it. So I wish that I still had that part of my life. I took it for granted at the time. I didn't realize how blessed I was, how lucky I was able to drive, through that gate because I had the key to it, or my family had the key to it to get access to certain areas. I mean, it was just a really special deal, and maybe someday we'll get a place locked down again where we can, year after year go back and mule deer hunt. But that's by far my favorite animal to hunt, to answer your question. And the best hunts that I've done with my girls have been mule deer as well. And they've got to hunt some pretty cool stuff. They've been able to hunt Alaska. Of course, there's no age, restriction there, so they've harvested, caribou. And Kylie, my youngest, shot her first bear when she was 8. Those were all DIY type things. They've hunted in New Zealand. McKenna's went to Africa with her mom and harvested a bunch of animals in Africa. And really, if I look back to it, the best hunts were still mule deer in Idaho, tags we drew, DIY.
Yeah.
Well, I've been, fortunate enough to take my daughter the last 3 years on eastern Montana mule deer hunts, and so it's becoming, like you said, one of those
14.
Things. Yeah.
Also, so right
perfect.
around the same age as Kylie.
Yeah, so it's one of those things that she really looks forward to it because of her schedule in school and sports and all the other things she does. She only gets a couple days a year, and she really looks forward to that.
It's so hard now compared to when I was growing up. Like, I'd get my homework, I'd get the textbooks and do homework at night. It gets dark at 5:30 that time of year. Now, if they don't have connectivity, they start to lose their mind, right? Because they got to do all these downloads and uploads with their homework and stuff. I mean, it's really makes it tough if you want to pull them out and for any period of time out of school.
Yeah. And my boy, who's 10, who's going to start hunting this year on apprentice program, he's going to have no problem missing all that other stuff. He's already told me, whenever you want to take me out of school to go hunting, Dad, I'm all for it.
Yeah, no, that's a good place to be. I can still remember trying to plow through my schoolwork year after year, every year, and just getting it done as soon as I could, so I didn't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So go hunting.
Yeah, it's go hunting.
So, Butch, I met you, I don't know, like 6 years ago here, and that's about the amount of time you've been coming to Hunt Expo. A little bit longer than that, right?
Connection with mule deer? I think that it's probably about right, 6 years. Something like that.
So tell me a little bit about how you got connected with Mule Deer Foundation, Hunt Expo, and I know your role here at Expo as well. You're a sponsor this year.
Right.
We're all wearing these great badges that are Kryptek. Tell us a little bit about that connection.
Well, it started off with the mission statement, right, and the passion for mule deer.
Which is, you actually haven't said, the battlefield to backcountry, right?
Well, in terms of the mission statement of MDF and the Expo.
Yep,
yeah. And then and then the involvement, kind of also the proximity of where we're located, Boise, Idaho to Salt Lake. I mean, it's a natural line of drift.
Right.
I mean, it's not difficult for us to get here and get acquired. I think that the real integration into MDF, though, started through associates that were running the Kryptek flag that had connections back in, and then those introductions just started to grow in terms of the network and relationships. People that were like-minded and involved. It's a fantastic show for us. It's grown year after year after year. I've seen that happen. The volume of people. I think that the tie-in with Utah and having to be present to put in for the tags is brilliant. I think that really helps this show and brings people in from all over.
Yep, and that's great for you as a vendor, as somebody who's selling your wares.
For all the brands here that are vendors.
Absolutely.
There's a high number of people that are attending the show. I don't know what the number will end up being, but it seems like today is overwhelming with people.
Yeah.
The aisles are wider.
Plus,
yeah, the aisles are wider, and it's still packed.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. But back to the involvement with Mule Deer Foundation, Kryptek is super humbled, super honored that we're a part of this. It goes back to, where we started, daydreaming about what we're doing here now. It's really neat for me to think back through the whole life cycle and then being able to be in a position to where we're able to give back to conservation through, joining with Mule Deer Foundation. We support a lot of groups, Dallas Safari, Wild Sheep's a big one, Ducks Unlimited and so on, but Mule Deer Foundation, again, it's near and real dear to my heart because of how passionate I am about mule deer hunting.
Very good. We're running out of time, but tell us a little bit. You and I talked about your new products for this year. You've got a couple of good things that'll be great for mule deer hunters. Tell us a little bit about what they can look for coming in 2019.
So we've got a collection that'll hit and launch here next month. It's a tactical collection that was all the input was pulled out of other deals we're doing with the military, and that collection is going to be really super fantastic for early season, hot weather type hunting, extremely durable. This handover there with guys that are, struggling with early season hunts, elk hunts in September, early season mule deer, all that stuff that happens when it's cool in the morning but gets blazing during the day. This is going to be a collection that these guys are going to be able to fall in, and it's going to be, price pointed such that it's going to be really affordable as well. But I think the real thing that people are going to enjoy about that is how durable the materials are that are in that program. The life that comes out of those pieces is going to be exceptional.
What's that line called?
It's our tactical collection.
Tactical
collection.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent. Anything else you want to tell us, and where can they get information and find you if they don't already know? Or
well, www.kryptek.com, Kryptek, which Kryptek, the name is Kryptos and Technos combined, meaning hidden technologies.
Right.
So Kryptek.com, there's lots of information there, and we've got a really nice online store where you can go and peruse things and check us out.
Outstanding.
Great.
Butch, thank you so much. I know you've got a ton. You've been in podcasts all day, so your voice is probably gone. But,
well, I'm glad I was able to get hooked up with you guys.
But we really appreciate your time today, and thank you. And until next time, this is Jody Stemler.
And I'm Steve Belinda, and Butch, thank you for your service. Thanks for all you do for conservation. We look forward to working with you at MDF, and thank you for talking mule deer with us.
Thank you, guys.